the statement. Call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock and ask that Cindy, the city clerk, read the statement of compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act into the record.
This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, with the meeting schedule notice to the Trenton Times, the Hunterdon County Democrat, and the meeting notice provided to the individuals on the listserv, department heads, the city attorney, and city engineer. This meeting is being streamed live and recorded using the Zoom meeting platform. The meeting agenda provides for all action items known at the time of publication and is subject to change. Roll call.
Please.
Councilwoman Lambert? Here. Councilman Sanders?
Here.
Councilman Stegman?
Here.
Council President Taylor? Here. Mayor Noah?
Here. All right, crew, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and followed by a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Hello there. Buenos evening.
Well, let's just dig right in. The first item on the agenda is the person-to-person transfer ABC license. This application is being delayed until the April 21st session, so we'll pass on that tonight. The second item is Sparkle Week. I'd like to advise everyone of the members of the public that Sparkle Week will be held in May and that the process will mirror the 2021 Sparkle Week in that participants will need to pay for items they are disposing. So we are doing exactly what we did last year. This was a change that the council and then Mayor Fall made last year to help recoup some of the costs for the expensive tipping fees for this annual event. I remember back in 2020, I think the city cost the city close to $18,000. So this was a direct result of kind of that year, and just a way to ease the burden a little bit on the city's finances. Are there any questions about this year's Sparkle Week resolution number 64-2022?
No question, just
No, go ahead.
just one quick comment. I think folks really appreciated the old version of Sparkle Week. I know we have a very tight budget this year and probably next year, but as things move forward and knock on wood, our budgets should get much better in the coming years. I would hope that the city would at that time consider going back to the original version. But given the circumstances we're in right now with the fiscal constraints, I think this is a good option.
So, Councilman Sanders, I'm really glad you said that because that's sort of my sentiment as well. The spirit of Sparkle Week was always like an amnesty arrangement, and I think the public really got into that whole aspect of it. But I agree that we have some financial constraints that won't allow that at this time. But hopefully it's not permanent. The question I was thinking of was, though, you said it cost us $18,000, Mayor?
Almost 18,000.
Almost, approximately
Yeah.
18,000. Was that after the fees were collected, or is just that
No,
the total cost?
Prior to.
Prior to this.
To the fees, so,
What did it cost last? Did we get?
You know, we didn't keep really good track of the numbers last year. Cindy brought in, I think, $4,700 in fees during the month of August, which was when it happened. Lester did not keep track of the tipping fee last year. So
I mean, going forward, it's probably a good idea, especially if we'd like to, kind of move it back to the amnesty arrangement so that we have a sense of what it's going to be costing us.
I agree with you entirely. I think certainly we'll track it very carefully this year, and I also agree with both of you that I would like to see this revert to its former incarnation. I would also, consider next year simply just adding a line item in the budget, and that is available to the public to see and to know that we're budgeting for that, and that's part of the budget. So I think that's another way to look at this, to actually just quantify it for the public so that they can see it on a line item. And that's part of what our priorities are for, as a city.
I think that'd be a prudent thing to do. Because one way or another, we are paying for it as
Yes.
citizens or as taxpayers, so, except for Jefferson Street. And maybe Alexander, those two will be.
But Cottage Hill gets a free ride, is that what you're saying, Councilman?
Just you and me.
That's a joke for members of the public.
Yes. There was no motion made.
That
there.
was levity,
There was no,
yes.
That was commotion.
commotion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Are there any further comments or questions on this resolution?
I think having the line item in the budget is a great idea, and tracking it this year will really give us a great baseline, because I would really hope that after this year's cost, inflationary aspect, that this would be like the worst we'll see for a long time in terms of increase, hopefully, knock wood.
Yeah, and my theory on this was that 2020 was a particularly difficult year, expensive year, because people were home and they had nothing to do but clean up their attics and cellars. So it may have been an anomaly. Historically, I don't know that we've kept track, but I think we should certainly keep track of them in the years ahead.
So for this year then, if it's going to be pick up on normal trash days, we won't be able to tell the difference between, we'll just use an average to say difference between normal trash day and.
Well, they'll have to purchase permits. And so, I think, Mike, we can do something with our online system and in-house that indicates it's for Sparkle. And anything during that time and the week that follows, right, definitely will be for Sparkle.
Plus, you can compare it to a regular pickup month.
Yeah,
so
I'm
to
thinking
speak.
more of the tipping fees.
Yeah.
How much of the tipping fees for that period are.
There should be a lift in the.
I would think so. I mean,
The tonnage.
up to 4 40-pound bags of garbage per household will increase the tipping fee.
Yeah,
for
so
that
we'll
period of
be
time.
able to get a pretty good
Right,
idea.
yeah, I mean, I think that maybe we have the DPW kind of track the numbers for maybe a couple weeks before and a couple weeks after, and then we'll have a good sense of kind of what it was
Well, they
during.
do try, Lester
Right.
has all that,
Yeah.
he
Yeah,
knows
we
the
can-
tipping fees all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
We can do that. We can get a baseline now. We can do that.
Okay, anything else on this? If not, may I have a motion to approve resolution 64-2022?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next item is an area in need of redevelopment. This is a resolution of the City of Lambertville, the County of Hunterdon, directing the City Planning Board to conduct a preliminary investigation to determine whether Block 1002, Lot 41, known as the Clausen property, or any part thereof is an area in need of redevelopment as defined in NJSA 40A:12-6. So I just want to talk a little bit about this before I open it up to council, just to give just to remind the council and the public here a little bit about the Clausen site and how it's zoned and why we're doing this. So the Clausen site is zoned within the RL zone, and the RL zone permits the following uses. It permits single-family detached dwellings, public, parochial, and nonprofit private schools for academic instruction, parks and recreation, conservation, municipal use, and cemetery use. Conditional uses permitted in the RL zone include a nursing home or assisted living facilities, house of worship, a farm market, a bed and breakfast, or an echo unit, which are small modular units that are temporarily placed on single-family properties, allowing seniors, for example, to age in place. The Clausens previously received a use variance approval to construct a second principal single-family dwelling on the site and for the creation of the farm market. The former farm market building is currently being leased by Fisherman's Mark for their food pantry. And in fact, this is not a permitted use within the RL zone and is technically in violation of the city's ordinance. And we all know that why they're there, and I think that was, I continue to think that the city made the right decision in that, and perhaps everyone agrees, or not. The city intends to move forward with the visioning process to determine how to utilize the existing buildings on the Clausen site Depending on the outcome, the uses proposed may not be permitted uses in the zone, such as the food pantry use. The city simply cannot revise the RL district to add additional uses envisioned for the Clausen site, as that will impact the entire RL zone and simply not the Clausen site. So, and this would also, nor can it create an entirely new zone for the Clausen site, as this would be considered spot zoning. However, the city can create specific zoning for the Clausen site through a redevelopment plan. The area in need of redevelopment study is simply the first step in the process required to be able to create a redevelopment plan for the site once the city determines what the desired uses are. So it's just a little bit of background on why we're doing this, and I don't know if any of the council have questions on this. Or comments? No?
So this would give us a measure of control moving forward over the portion of the Clausen property that is exclusive of the open space.
Correct, anything in the exception zone,
Okay.
right? So
Oh,
that would
that's
be
the word.
the historic Holcomb House, the log cabin, or the farm market.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. No other questions or comments about that? Okay. Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve this resolution, which is number 65-2022.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? All right, the motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, boards and commissions. So the Human Rights Council, this is for an appointment of 2 students to serve on the Human Rights Council. This was something that we've been looking to do. I think the ordinance was amended, I don't remember exactly when, in the last year or so, to encourage or to encourage student participation from the district. This year we've had 2 very qualified young ladies who are interested, and so with the conversation with Ronnie Todd Marino, I've decided to present them, the 2 of them together as kind of co-representatives of the student body. Are there any questions about this? So this is nominating Fatima Rodriguez-Clevel and Araceli Torres to serve as student representatives to the Human Rights Council. I think I sent everybody their bios, so you've all read them. I know that, I believe that you've met, have you met both the young ladies?
I have, yes.
Yeah.
I was at the Human Rights Council meeting and met both of
It's
them.
a term for a year? Is that how we do it? Is that how the council does it?
Oh, you know,
Is it for a year?
You know, that's a great question because in addition to that, technically it's one student. That's the way the ordinance is written. And I don't know that we have a good process in place, or selection criteria in place. You know, it would be, I mean, I would like to see the Human Rights Council work in concert with the school to find appropriate candidates and maybe give us a short list. I mean, 2 is a pretty short list, but, you know, to kind of have an application process, and then maybe put it on the school to make the recommendation, because they know the students best. You know, I don't know what others think about that. Because I think going forward, I don't have anything opposed to either of these 2 students. I thought they were both really competent and they added a lot to our discussion, but we don't want to go forward and just continually disregard our ordinance, that's all. Right? I don't know what others think.
Well, I guess my question is, well, once we agree, they'll be at the next meeting, which is April. This is an April meeting yet?
Human Rights Council?
Yeah,
Yes,
coming
it's
up.
actually Monday.
So, is it a calendar year, or do we want to make it a calendar year?
Well, they've only just started
Right.
in March.
Or is it a school year, and is it until they leave, till they want to leave? until they, you know, not want to leave, but
Mhm.
move on to college and all those kind of stuff.
Right.
So,
Do you have the ordinance pulled up?
Yeah, pull up the ordinance, so, it's interesting, Title 3, Section 17.4 sets forth the appointments, the membership, and the terms. The public sector members are all ex officio, it looks like, the mayor, the president of the city council, and so forth. The private sector members, and it has terms, the private sector members in our ordinance does not, it lists the students, or a student, but it doesn't say that there's a term. So our
It
ordinance
does not list the
does
student?
not,
So
it
that's
lists,
not-
it lists the student,
Okay.
but it does not have a term. It's an appointment process. I think we probably do this appointment in January, like, you know, unless it's, so my recommendation is that we have them serve for the remainder of the year, and then we appoint in January as need be.
what kind of year then? 12 months or?
Well, no, that's like, what, it's the appointment process that we do for every board and commission.
Oh, I got you.
So it's part of, yeah.
Yeah,
Every
yeah,
January
okay.
through the end of the school year, so they'd be serving basically 6 months?
Well,
Well-
it depends on when they graduate,
Yeah.
right? So we might have to fill the position half year, right? So if we have graduating seniors, and then in June, we would know, and we would have to reappoint for the balance of the year.
Or they may want to stay on until August when they potentially leave for college.
True.
I mean, there's still a youth representative, whether they're in school or in summer, you know, it's.
Well, the only counterpoint I would make to that is if you had somebody that was coming in who was a rising sophomore, they would have more kind of to do with the school community than someone who's exiting the school community and going to college.
Well, it could be as long as the student matriculates in the system, in the school system.
But also, I mean, there is a chair of this body whose job it is to think about how they want to handle the membership, so we may be getting too far into the weeds on it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's up to the chair and, you know, to coordinate with the superintendent. I mean, I just think that because the school year starts in September, it doesn't align with our process, but it's more amenable to the student's calendar to appoint in September. But, you know, whether they serve through the following August or June or, you know, however.
Well, I would suggest this is a relatively easy fix to the ordinance if we wanted to weigh in at a later date in terms of how this appointment process might differ from the typical appointment process.
Yeah,
Well, maybe once they're appointed, they would have input into what they think they should, you know,
right.
how it would work for them as well.
That's right.
So there is a meeting on Monday. Unfortunately, I'm not able to attend Monday's Human Rights Council meeting, but I can reach out to Ronnie and see what her thoughts are. Or, you know, maybe some other people on the Human Rights Council and see what they are. I think, you know, Bambi was going to reach out to students about just some other offline issues. So maybe the students can give us their thoughts on how they'd like to see it, how it would work best for a student.
This is important, I don't want to have us lose the track of it. I'm really glad we have two people really interested in doing this, and I think it's great to have students in a process like this, because, you know, we will have to work on the details of this a little bit, but this is a great opportunity for the kids, and also for us to get their insights.
Right, and we did get some really important input from them regarding some of the FEMA activities in Ida. It was really, really good that we heard from them.
All right. Are there other questions or comments on this?
So you want me to talk to Ronnie, right?
Yes, if you
Okay.
would. I'm happy to talk to her as well, but
Okay.
I think in the interest of this particular situation, I'd love to see if somebody would make a motion to confirm both these nominees.
So moved?
Second?
All right, all in favor of?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. We have a few items up for discussion tonight. Most of you are familiar with some of this. The first thing I'll mention is the rainbow crosswalks. I'd like to thank everyone for his or her input on this. I have sent an email to New Hope Celebrates on March 29th and then a follow-up email on March 30th. And I did make a call and leave a message yesterday. I have not heard back. Just to kind of memorialize what we talked about at the council level, it seems as though there was some willingness on behalf of the council to potentially allow the New Hope Celebrates to do some rainbows or some kind of coloring in the site easement triangles at an intersection to be determined, and that this would be a temporary situation until such time as the council wants to take up, if the council wants to take up the question of painted sidewalks.
That's their name, site easement triangles, I never heard that, that's good.
I think, yeah, site easement triangles,
No, those are those,
Yeah,
yeah.
I never heard the term before.
me neither, I had to like think about it.
And interestingly, I never really noticed the site easement triangles before this conversation, but now I'm quite familiar with all the site easement triangles, and they're all different shapes. Some of
I
them
thought
are.
they were fire truck
well,
turning triangles to allow for larger vehicles to turn.
Yeah, well, that's probably right, yeah. So it seems as though there's, until we hear back from New Hope Celebrate, there's unless anybody has any other points they wish to make about this.
So who is our point of contact with that group?
We have a woman named Melissa and a man named Eric. I don't have their last names right in front of me.
Okay.
So they're the principal contacts
Okay.
for this. Okay.
All right.
The next items are proposed ordinances that we've been looking at a little bit, and we just wanted to kind of get these out here. I know that Cindy was kind enough to write a memorandum and to distribute it to the council members about each of these ordinances, and you can, this is just to kind of get this out there in the public for the moment. We will probably move forward on at least a couple of these things, potentially as early as the next meeting here, but at some point in the next couple of months, we will probably move forward on these. The first one is the electric car charging stations. I've been to a number of meetings, webinars, conversations about the new state requirements for charging stations. There's going to be a huge amount of grant funding coming in from the infrastructure package, from the infrastructure bill. And so this is a sample ordinance that was sent out for EV parking, service equipment, and ready-made parking spaces. We'll take a look at it. There may be a couple of things that we would like to change or to amend in this. We do have at least one resident who has an EV charging station on the sidewalk, so there are a couple of things that we need to kind of consider as we move forward with this ordinance. But I think it's something that I would like to bring to the council in the next month or so. So I'll be working on the language. I'll certainly talk to Bill, and we'll do a little bit of work with the Environmental Commission to see what recommendations they have. They are, in fact, the Environmental Commission, I would just note, is applying for grants at this moment that are available for 4 charging stations. And so I will let everyone know what happens with that. I don't remember when the grant application's due, but fairly soon. But if we get that, we'll have to talk about it. We don't, anyway, I'm not gonna put let's hold off on that for the moment. So that's one. Are there any initial questions about that? We'll certainly talk more about all of these as we go along.
So I'm sort of in a fog about how this would practically lay out. Would it be like a parking location where multiple vehicles could come and charge? I'm assuming it wouldn't be just on the street, like a parking meter.
Yeah, so municipalities are gonna have to follow state laws in terms of land use. So developments are gonna be required to have EV charging stations relative to their size, that kind of thing. And then individual municipalities will make determinations about where charging stations would be. The Environmental Commission is considering the lot on North Union Street is probably the best lot in in terms of access to infrastructure that's above the flood, the Acme site would not be a great because of the underground electrical requirements. So, some of it is about where municipalities can do it and what parameters that they're gonna establish in terms of, just process and will these be free, will they be charged, how will all that work, so.
So will the Environmental Commission be presenting anything to council or the public?
Not specifically about the ordinance, they'll probably look at the ordinance and make recommendations, and then we'll hand it over to Mr. Opal, and then we'll bring it into the council.
If it's not abundantly clear, we don't have a choice. Like,
Right.
no matter what we do, this is going into effect.
Oh, I support it, I just am unclear kind of how it's gonna work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
like
yeah.
how is it physically laid out? What's the expectation for cars using it?
Is it in a parking space?
Is it in a
Is
parking
free
space? Do
parking?
we have to keep other cars out? How
Yes.
long are they going to be there?
Yeah.
There's just a lot of little things that I think are important to discuss, just so we can have something that, that works, because we want it to be successful.
Mhm.
I did talk to Park Mobile, and they do have an app for this. So
Okay.
there's a way to recoup the fees.
Yeah, I think we should consider that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's coming down the road. Sorry for the pun, it was completely unintended, I don't like puns at all.
Although you do fall
I'm
victim
not
to
a pun
them.
person, yeah, I'm not a big fan of them. Stop sign at Swan and Stutterford. As probably many people know, I recently made a journey up to Cottage Hill on foot and asked myself again whether we should have a stop sign for eastbound traffic on Swan Street coming down the hill. Part of it is, if you walk up there, you'll see that there's a hedge on the property on the corner, and it's very difficult if you're coming down Stutterford Street to see any cars that may be traveling eastbound on Swan Street.
However, in the past, where the hedges have grown, Public Works has reached out to or the police department, I'm not quite sure who did, to trim the hedges, to get your trimmer and trim the hedges back every year. And it happens in a couple of spots in town, like although it's controlled by a traffic light, the bottom of Swan Street, the side triangle is tough too. So, and when I had brought this up several years ago, I was, at that time, I was told that it wouldn't work, putting a stop sign there. I don't know.
Why? Because people wouldn't, I don't know.
That's why there wasn't one. But if something,
No, down the hill from Swan, if you're coming, so a lot of cars will turn off of 518, that's 518,
Yeah.
come down Swan.
and run through the intersection.
Isn't that,
There's no stop
isn't
sign
that
there.
westbound?
I'm
It
sorry,
is
westbound, excuse me, westbound, thank
Yeah,
you.
westbound.
But
Sorry, that's why
it's
you're
like-
scratching your head.
The other reason.
Westbound, yeah.
As it.
But if you're going backwards up the hill, no, you're right, it's westbound, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did speak to the property owner at the corner there on Stutterford and Swan, and they do plan to cut back their hedge, but I don't know if they,
Well, they're in the city right away if they don't. I mean, we can do that. And we've had cooperation from property owners before, so. But anyway, the stop sign and Lieutenant, it is to make sure that the people at both stop signs know that it's a two-way stop sign, right? I mean, is that something that DOT, I'm not saying we need DOT permission, but,
I concur with the mayor. I took a look at that intersection. We did start that, actually, when Paul Franz was still a public works director, we painted a white stop line up there, and we were going to proceed forward with the stop sign there, going back years ago. The white line is actually
yeah, I
still
saw
there.
that.
And so I concur that it also will impact maybe some speeding complaints that we get on Swan Street. So I concur. I think it's a good idea. And it might, like I said, impact the speeding on it, slow cars down a little bit.
No, I think it's a good idea too, but I just wonder if, on those two stop signs, it says, like, we go to an intersection, so if
Oh,
it's a
you wanna-
four-way stop
Are
sign,
you on like a little yellow sign at the bottom of the stop sign that says two-way stop?
yeah, something like that.
I've seen that before, like, I think they do make little tiny signs
Yeah,
at the bottom of the stop
The
sign.
question for the reader is gonna be which two ways, because there's.
Well, only on the stop sign.
Well, why don't we, well, would we consider an always stop? So
You
putting one
can't
up,
stop coming up the hill.
why not? Because? Because that's the way it's
Well,
always been done.
Let's try going up the hill and stopping, because we're going up several times a day, and then see how it works before there's a stop at the top of the hill.
Okay.
I mean,
Well, most of the traffic going uphill turns right, probably
Yeah.
80+%,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But your concern is that if you had a two-way coming, you know, the one in place and then the other one going west on Swan, people would not know who to yield to? Is that the concern? Because there's the rule, driver on the left yields to driver on the right.
Well, if you're texting at the same time.
Well, that's a different problem.
There must, along those lines, I'm in favor of the stop sign.
Okay.
And let's see what the how DOT treats stop signs on hills, going up, going down, whatever.
I'm happy to do a little research on that. I'm happy to do a little research and continue the conversation if need be.
Well, we have someone who's run stop sign regularly.
Well, why don't I mean, this is not, we're not introducing the ordinance tonight, so why don't I do a little bit more research? I'll inform the council of what I've discovered, and we'll take it from there. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right.
Let's take it offline, please.
Please proceed.
Hey, these meetings are pretty short, right? So, I mean, come on. Next, we're going to be considering an ordinance to the streets and sidewalks. This is something that I'm just going to kind of read through Cindy's memorandum here because I think she gets it right in the nose. The city of Lambertville was heavily impacted by utility companies. The gas main upgrade began in 2018 and continued until 2021. And the water main upgrade began in 2018 and will continue through the next couple of years. The ordinance as it's written today does not differentiate between a homeowner making a sidewalk repair or the utility company installing a new water main. So that ordinance, what we're going to be looking at is creating changes to the ordinance to separate the two different repairs and increase the fees accordingly. That's basically it.
I just have one question about the draft language that we saw that I'm trying to open, but it doesn't
Yeah,
appear
it's
to
here
be.
if you want.
Thank you. We say that,
The highlighted portions you kind of know are the.
yeah, okay, so the problem I have with the moratorium, I think maybe there's a word missing or something. City of Lambertville imposes a 5-year moratorium on all road work completed within the city limits, meaning a moratorium on opening it again.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we may just want to clarify that. That was that one thing I saw.
Good catch. All right, were there any other questions about that?
The moratorium meaning they cannot open the streets
That's
for
correct.
5 years
That's
Once the
correct.
street is repaved and done.
Yeah.
once it's been paved.
And we've had situations like on South Franklin Street where we just finished the street, somebody wanted to put a gas line in the past.
I'm glad I got my
And
gas
it
line.
just happened on George Street last year, and everybody was very irritated by it. It was on George Street, they waited so long for the street to be repaved, and then literally not 2 months later.
The water company or
Yeah.
the gas company.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why curb to curb is curb to curb, because of instances where that has happened and we have no control over it, except after the fact.
The last item here is amendments to the shade tree ordinance. I don't have those prepared at the moment. I am meeting with the Shade Tree Commission. We thought we might have some language already for this, but I'm going to kind of wade into this a little bit more with the Shade Tree Commission over the next couple of weeks. I've got a meeting scheduled with them to look at the language. One of my goals is to kind of foster an attitude, especially in the central business district, of more trees. And we're going to be looking at the language and how we can do that. So that's all I'm going to say on that. I'm going to be working with the Shade Tree Commission this month to parse out some new language.
Yeah, that would be great, because we talked about that offline about it. It's not more, it's a little bit more than more trees, it's like trees aren't being replaced.
Well, that's it.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I'll just throw this out there because this is kind of what this is sort of some of the language that I'm looking to put in, is, requiring people, when a tree comes down, to plant a new tree, or businesses or property owners, right, to replace trees that have come down. So, so that's one of the potential changes that will come.
That is already required.
I thought we had that.
Yeah, the shade tree ordinance was so it was updated. There is a requirement for some people that they have to take out their stumps. There is not a requirement for, older properties. So, I'm going to be crafting letters and, having some communication before or in conjunction with an ordinance change to people to property owners, specifically in the central business district, to bring about a more kind of uniform approach.
And maybe we'll broaden the conversation to whose trees are they anyway, in the public right of way, on the sidewalk. I mean, who's responsible for maintenance of the trees, that type of holistic thought.
That's in the ordinance already, I believe.
Yeah,
It's
I
the
know.
property owners.
Yeah.
Right, well, the city cannot take responsibility, in my view, the city cannot take responsibility for all of the trees
Oh, no, I
on
don't
the
disagree
sidewalks
with
in either the central business district or the rest of the city.
Well, we don't own those properties.
Right.
We don't know what.
We don't own, the property owners own out to the curb.
So, some of this is about education as well,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So, some of it's just about,
Yeah, the one challenge I think we have in all this is to remove a grown tree and a stump and to plant can be, $5,000 or $6,000. I've had this done because trees might have died, and it's expensive. So I do have sympathy for folks that, are chopping. A $5,000 nut is a big, probably, it would be nice if we had a fund, that could help folks out or whatever, but we do need to think through this, because I have some, sympathy and sensitivity for folks that are challenged by this.
no, absolutely.
Well, that was kind of,
another thing I would like to do kind of with the ordinance is sort of step it out a little bit more, so there's a little bit more of a process, and so that it's not so, you have to do this right now kind of thing, right? So to give people a little bit of time to prepare and plan for removal, to not necessarily go after a property owner within 2 months of a tree being cut down. And also, so yes.
well, it would be also a good way to figure out how to fund it. So, since everyone in the city benefits by trees in the city, if you want to go by districts, that's okay too. The central business district, for example, because that's the one that's seen mostly by our visitors, is there's some mechanism that perhaps we can do that sets aside some money specifically, or has a fee structure that we, like this, it would be great if the Shade Tree Commission had the funding in order to do that.
Right, well, I have stated publicly that in 2023, I will donate the full amount of my stipend to the Shade Tree Commission. And if they want to use that for the trees in the central business district, I think that's a possibility. So,
It's like 2 trees.
what's it, $1,000? Come on, it's got to be more than 2 trees.
Well, to
You're
put-
worth at least 3 trees, man.
No, this is all great, and I appreciate the conversation. The reality is, when people buy properties, they know what their responsibilities are, and they know where their property lines are, and we cannot afford to maintain all the trees, so I appreciate the sentiment, and I agree with it, but there are lots of other things we're gonna have to be thinking about to potentially collect new funding for, thinking about districts. So
I
we just have
agree.
before us right now.
No, I agree, and I've already had at least one conversation that was difficult to
It
have.
may be interesting to have a conversation with Main Streets, New Jersey, to to see how other, to see if that membership opens up some funds to us. So,
Okay.
you know, quite often, we're not the only municipality in the state that's facing, even if it's diseased trees. So there may be something that we can learn from Main Street or Main Street, New Jersey.
Okay. All right.
And if you'd like me to work with you on it, I'll be happy to.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, I will. Moving on, the next item on the agenda is sale of public property. So the council and I have talked a little bit about some of the vacant land owned by the city of Lambertville, knowing that this is going to be a difficult budget year, having worked through some of the budget a little bit. We're proposing consideration of selling 3 parcels that the city owns. One is at 310 North Union Street, which is my understanding is a buildable lot.
For a narrow
310
house.
is not.
It's not a buildable lot. Okay.
And it's in the flood zone.
Yeah, I know it's in the flood zone. Okay, so, all right, so strike that, it's not a buildable lot. But the three addresses are 310 North Union Street, 113 Swan Street, and 150 Swan Street.
When you say not a buildable lot, how much is it
So,
not a buildable lot?
because of the setbacks,
Mhm.
you know, the side yard and the front yard and the backyard requirements in the R2, I sent it to the zoning officer and he said it's not a buildable lot.
He didn't tell you why?
Well, I mean,
I mean,
no,
it's not enough square footage?
not enough square footage. In order to, it is, sorry, I didn't bring my glasses tonight, but it is,
I see it on the outside.
it's a very short lot. I want to say that it is 17 feet wide. So if you take our 5-foot setback on both sides, you're going, the building width would be 10 feet. And then the setback, of course, would always be in with keeping what is in the community, but a 10-foot wide house, it just, it's not a buildable lot.
That'd be really cute.
Well, it's not a buildable lot if someone doesn't come and ask for a variance or...
Correct, but currently they'd have to ask for a variance, and it's it's located
No,
between 2 other structures.
Yeah, no, I
So, he just, yeah, he just said it was not a buildable lot.
can I please see that?
This, sure.
Thank you.
Mhm. But,
Well, the question is, if 10 or 12 was currently vacant, where there are houses, would they be buildable lots now? I know there's something already on them, so I'm not asking a facetious question.
okay.
I mean, the 11 looks like 12, looks like 10, so how do the other, how
Well,
do
the
those
problem is
other?
they were all attached rows, and one of them caught fire and had to be demolished. It was part of that whole row.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that a property owner that's contiguous, that touches it, one side wouldn't want to purchase it to make their lot bigger.
Well, anyone who did purchase the lot on either side knows they're taking a risk if they want to build on it, because they'd have to come in front of a board for approval. So it would be,
They wouldn't, given its location in the flood zone, they'd have to have a raised addition to their home.
well, those are raised, aren't they, right? Those that are
Well,
in
the
there
ones
now?
on the left side are, the one on the right is not.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, thank you. Now, 113 Swan Street is, I was a little bit confused about what 97 Swan Street had to do with any of these. But I think he sent, or Bill sent another plot plan that was really clearer.
Yeah, probably. I mean, this is the tax map, and that's the piece of property. It's like a triangle.
Yeah, but there was something from our engineer as well that came, that I wish I didn't print it out and bring it with me, I'm sorry. But it would seem that the only access to this lot for a building is off of Cottage Street in Swan. You can't put you know, if someone is gonna, in reality, buy this and put a building there, it's gotta be up on Cottage Street, because it's steep slopes and there's a big drainage ditch there, so.
He's not doing a very good job helping us sell these properties, Steve.
But you could do it. I
Lovely
mean,
views.
you could do it,
Yeah.
but I don't see how
Well,
someone could.
people may buy them for something other than.
No, I know. I'm
Yeah.
just teasing.
Well, no, but I think it's someone could make it work.
Well, and the other thing too is you're not just looking at the sale of that property this year, you're looking at a tax revenue coming in every year thereafter.
Yeah, so they would have to comply with anything another builder would on that property, so.
Any remarks or questions on this end of the dais?
Just a bit of trivia, useless trivia. In Hanoi, they have a style of building called tube houses. I don't know how to say it in Vietnamese, and they're basically extremely narrow, 10 to 12 feet wide, and they go up, some as high as like 12 stories, and then all the way back. So just, you know, just saying. I saw it this morning and it made me think of this property. But I don't think it applies
I
here.
drove up here. This is so.
Well, there is a new
right
movement
here,
for
there's
tiny
that
houses, so.
culvert.
Yeah, I know what it's.
They're really
Nobody's
cute.
building on that lot.
Yeah.
If you want to move on another hill, well,
All right, any other questions about this vacant land that we,
what are we gonna do?
what's that?
What would you like to do about it?
Well, we're not doing anything tonight.
No, I know, but, well, now that we learned that this could be a problem with,
Well, I still think that the land has some potential value to people, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a contiguous
Mhm.
neighbor or,
I think the question is, in my opinion, we should not retain assets that are useless to us. We should get rid of them. But then it probably also means we're gonna need to be realistic
Yeah.
about what price we make
of
it.
course.
as far as
Of course.
process is on these, so can you go through, if we decided to do, or you want to wait till the next meeting?
No, I mean, we can ask the question now, right? I mean, it's nothing that's asking the question about process.
For 310 North Union Street, if the city wants to retain and then sell, like exert some control over it and then sell it, you know, regardless of how it wants to do that, I would recommend the tax sale foreclosure process first. The city would take title after going through that process, and then it could make a determination how it wants to dispose of the property. I've seen, for example, instances like this where you know, it's not a buildable lot, so the city can sell to an adjoining property owner directly. They can't build on it, but they can put a side garden or make some use of it. And it would also, you know, the other side of that is, as Cindy mentioned, it would go on the tax rolls, the property would be reassessed, and that would be included as part of the adjoining owner's property. If both owners were interested in it, the city could go to bid and the bid, you know, award to the highest bidder. So that's also a possibility
Or they
too.
could go in together and buy it and divide it.
Yeah, they could do that.
That's the third option if they want to incur the cost of subdividing it to where it basically divides that middle line and she gets some extra.
Yeah,
So what if an owner, property owner wanted to buy it and then like put a patio? Could they do that? Could they do something like that, right?
yeah, why not?
They just couldn't put a separate structure, but they could they extend their existing,
House.
I think subject to
Building.
existing zoning ordinance,
Yeah, maybe a
as
deck
long
or
as it's in
something.
compliance.
right, right,
They could use it as a,
okay.
Well, they could use it, I guess, for anything that's attached
Mhm.
to, or even a shed, but
Yeah,
it would have to meet whatever requirements the current
Right.
are for, that dictate that, so. And the other two?
113, the city owns the certificate for 113.
Yes.
Would be, that would be I have to go back, I know I sent an email on this, I'm sorry. I think that and 150 Swan would be just a sale, and that would go, 150 is a little bit different because that is a buildable lot technically. So I think that should be, whatever is decided, if it's decided to sell 150 Swan, that should be done separately. And that would be, public auction to the highest bidder. And I believe, as I mentioned in my email, that I see the assessed value is $170,000. The city could consider setting a minimum bid price in the bid proposal to say that, I don't know if 170 is appropriate, maybe that's a good starting point. But, the city could set, and keeping in mind that if the property is bid on and eventually purchased from the city, it would go back on the tax roll, so, you could incentivize the sale of it, knowing that it's going to produce in the future if somebody decides to buy it and build on it. 113, I looked at the map, I kind of agreed that there may be an area where something could get built, but it would be a project, I think. The slope is steep, but I believe in talking to Emily, the city planner, it's possible that something could go there. Whether that's something that a potential purchaser wants to undertake is another story, but that's what has to be considered when determining how to proceed with 113. But just to recap, 310, my recommendation would be tax sale foreclosure, and 150 Swan Street, sale to the highest bidder.
150 is next to Huggins' house, right?
That's 113. 150 is at the bottom of
Oh,
Stutter.
115 you said, not 150.
113,
150 Swan Street.
150 is at the bottom of Stutterford.
Oh, yeah.
Right by the
That's that
eventual
triangle
stop- right by the
piece.
eventual stop sign.
It was at the
Yes,
triangle
next to the new,
piece?
soon-to-be stop sign.
Is that the triangle piece, Cindy?
Yes, 113 is this triangle piece.
It's not, 150 is not a triangle.
No, 113 is.
The one you were looking at is 113.
Yeah,
That's,
okay.
that's a triangle shape,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
The, I think the least palatable one, and I don't think at this point someone bought the adjacent property and stopped at the foundation or the retaining wall, whatever that thing is. So I think that's probably the least likely one that we maybe included into our open space inventory, because that's a real challenge. But
So
I,
it's a decent size.
oh yeah, well, that's a big one. Yeah, okay, yeah. But then again, that's got more steep slope issues than, well, it's got as much of it, more of a challenge than I think the one that's off Cottage, if they decide to build our.
I'm sorry, which one is more of a challenge, 150?
You can just see, the fort that's currently there will be good when, before we make a swimming pool.
There was something in one of your emails, Bill, about the easement on 113 and potential for litigation.
Yeah.
I tried to look at different things and I didn't see that. But
I could send, I believe I have a survey, and if I didn't send that, I could.
you did send a survey of 97. So, but you said that
Well, 97
isn't the
it's
property.
not, yeah.
But you said that the easement ends at the 113 property line. So I'm not clear where the problem would be, for lack of a better word.
And maybe I wasn't clear, and I apologize, the easement extends onto 1069 Lot 1, the city-owned property.
Oh, it does?
It
Because I
does.
thought you said it was at the property line.
Yeah, it's, on the survey that I sent, that looks a little bit more pronounced than it really is. It does encroach onto the city-owned property, just a slight amount.
Okay.
It's not, it's an easement, but it's not, what can they do on the easement?
It's a driveway easement, so I haven't seen the exact language of this easement. Typically, driveway easements are just allowed for driveway use. So, for example, the owner of, it was 1069 Lot 5, they would only be allowed to traverse across the front of the other 4 parcels to get to Swan Street. They're not allowed to just store materials on there or use it for any other purpose other than to drive across it.
Well, the way that it's actually, but why don't you take a ride up there and look at this? So we can get, because there's one driveway that services 3 houses.
Right, and that's, it goes across the front of the homes.
Right.
Right.
And then the house that looks like it's never getting construction done on it has its own driveway.
In the back.
No, not in the back, in the front. They have their own driveway, they don't go up that hill. It doesn't go to that house.
But
So-
I think in any event, the issue is resolved. I think the councilman mentioned that the owner that had the most issue has moved.
Yeah, but that was the house that we looked for access from Boozer Street from the cemetery. You know, the Boozer Street, so.
I'm familiar.
I don't think that, we have to get more information on this. So,
I mean, those issues.
but the person moved, but the person is least affected, that's on the other right end of the, they're between that person and the 2 houses. That's that one steep driveway, and then next to it is a house that services their property next to the culvert, and they drive up from the other direction. But there could be something on paper, I
Okay, so can we work on this offline?
don't know. Certainly.
Okay. Next, we have equipment and furniture that we're looking to sell. Cindy, why don't you just touch base on this?
Sure.
Very straightforward, I think. Hopefully
We've done this in the past. These are all, vehicles that we're currently not using. And then we'd like to clean out City Hall and, get rid of things that we're not using there. So I gave you kind of an overview of the vehicles we definitely have. We have some workstations, and then, once we start moving some things to City Hall, we may find, I know we have like a hospital bed on the 5th floor. So just things like that we're not using, we'll probably never use, just get rid of them.
Does this
And-
require us to do anything, or is
It
it just an
does.
FYI?
No, it does. You're going to have to adopt a resolution. We'll have that for your next meeting. And then after that, we usually do it through either public surplus, there's also municipal. What I try to do is look at both sites to see which is going to be the most cost-effective for us. And then we'll post them for, a period of time. And then the sale will be on a certain day, and hopefully we'll get bidders.
My recollection is those cube walls were donated to us to begin.
Correct, they were.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So they
That's
were no
FM.
cost of us, but
That's it.
they're very large is what we found. And so, because they're so big, it's nothing that we could use. Even the police said they couldn't use them.
We already have Steve Sandy down from like 10 years ago, but we're good, yeah. They're still standing.
So it's really an FYI.
If not, it's cleanup day.
Let's clean up
That's
there.
right.
Next volunteer opportunity will be at City Hall.
Will I be opening up Facebook Marketplace and seeing it?
No.
That was a joke.
Be careful.
Speaking of cleanup, I'm just going to make a quick announcement here to say thank you to everybody who participated in the creek cleanup this weekend. It was a huge success. We had 80 volunteers at the end of the day. We estimate that we hauled away 6,000 pounds of debris.
Wow.
So the DPW, everybody except for one person was there. I was there. We spent 2 hours with 3 trucks going to the 7 different sites, 80 volunteers. Remarkable effort. Thank you, Mike and Cindy, for your organizational efforts. I also just want to thank the Environmental Commission, Liz Peer, Kelly Kapler. There were a lot of people, Lindsay, just an amazing, and Mary Ann, of course, did an amazing amount of organization and coordination. So it was a great day and a great success, and I think it was something to really celebrate and feel hopeful about. So.
Actually, I met neighbors that I didn't know lived in my neighborhood, or just moved in like 8 months ago or something. It was great to be able to meet people.
Any interesting finds?
There were interesting finds, and you can read about them in this week's Lambertville Matters.
Thursday,
There's spoilers.
Thursday morning, that's right.
Oh my God.
Unless they climb the tree to get something out.
Ah, yes, that's true.
That's going to be the little tagline.
Can you give us a little teaser?
Nope, no teasers.
There's also, there's one sign that is across from
Yeah.
Public Works that's laying free to go in the stream.
Yes, well,
So, I don't know.
that'll be a USDA thing, I think it's,
Yeah, who
can't be
takes
lifted
that,
out
I
of
have
the
no
stream.
idea, but it's slowing down the water because it does say 25 miles.
all right. Moving on to public participation. This is the part of the meeting where we allow and encourage the public members of Lambertville to speak their minds, ask their questions. Is there any member of the public here who wishes to make a comment or?
Can we go home?
How many people do we have, Michael, on Facebook tonight?
We have 11 people. We have, and,
We're doing
oh,
it
no,
as
we do.
well.
We have one hand.
No, we're not Facebook Live, it's Zoom.
Oh, not Facebook, I'm sorry, Zoom.
Zoom. All right, we have one person?
Yeah.
Okay.
Judy Gleason.
All right. Is she,
All right, Judy, you can talk. Please give us your name and your address.
Yes, this is Judy Gleason, 86 North Union Street. I had two questions. I had two questions about the tree discussion, and those questions are the following. First, I think I heard someone say that the homeowner is responsible to replace a tree that they have to take down. Their response, and I wondered if somebody could say exactly why they're legally responsible to do that. If they own that, I wasn't sure that part of it. So that's my first question. And my second question is, in the discussion of trees and the cost and the expense and the difficulty for people, I mean, we had to take a tree down and we replaced it, and I can say it's an expensive proposition. But I wanted to know whether, in connection with that kind of discussion, we will ever see where we are in terms of our huge financial issues this year, and whether we can see things and how it will be affecting people, because the cost of a tree, although it's frankly many, many dollars, it pales against what might be the situation in terms of our budget and obligations. And I just wondered if we would have that information.
Judy, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that second question. It was could you repeat the second question, please?
Yeah, my second question was dealing with when we look at the cost of doing trees and homeowner requirements, if there are homeowner requirements in terms of replacing trees, how a homeowner can address some of those demands when we don't really have a sense of what's going to happen to us in terms of the cost of living in this town, just in terms of taxation and other issues, both the town and the school. And I don't have that information, and I wondered if we would have a sense of when we'll start getting that.
Yeah, we'll start getting it fairly soon. How's that for specific? So it sounded like your question was more about the timing of the budget. Is that right?
Well, I think it's about both, because if the city is going to decide you are required immediately to, or whenever we're required to spend the hundreds and thousands, in some cases dollars, of replacing a tree, I think people benefit from knowing what else the town is going to be charging them for.
Okay, so Judy, I think I've got both of your questions here. So the first answer is the homeowners are already responsible for maintaining the trees in front of their houses.
Okay, so in the maintenance, excuse me for interrupting, but just be clear. So responsible for maintaining, is this a city ordinance? Is this a state law? So if a tree comes down on the street in front of my property, which is a part that I'm apparently owning in terms of responsibility, I am required to replace that in some calendar
No.
way, or how?
No.
Well, what's the timing of that requirement? I'd like to see that in the ordinance.
It's not a requirement, Judy, at this moment. What I was talking about earlier was that I'm going to be working with the Shade Tree Commission to look at the ordinance and to potentially make some suggestions or some amendments to the ordinance. So there's nothing, while you are responsible for the care and upkeep of a tree that's in front of your house, there is no requirement at the moment to replace a tree that comes down.
Okay, thank you for that.
That's the first question. So the second question, I believe, was just about kind of the timing of the budget.
Well, yeah, okay, we can call it timing. I mean, this is of great concern to people who have listened and watched and heard and seen what the debt and other issues are. And
Well,
I'm not sure people are going to have a chance to understand that if we get it sort of right up at the very end.
Well, we're only, we're just starting the 4th month of the year. So, we have with the finance committee, we do meet weekly. We have worked through our budget hearings. A lot of the numbers for the operating budget are in place. The thing about the budget that's a little bit complicated this year is we are still trying to determine the best way to fund our various IDA repair costs this year. So some of that will have to be bond ordinance. We're looking at potentially a number of different mechanisms for funding these things, and so we're still in those discussions. We are trying to be careful about the amount of money that we might have to borrow this year. So working with the finance team, all I can say is we're meeting every week, and as soon as we get everything in order, I should think, certainly I'd hope to have the numbers, out to the public, already, but there are still some considerations. There have been the way, for example, that the USDA grant is being funded. We just finally got information about that. So that grant will close out this year, so that changes kind of our approach to potentially funding that $1.8 million project. So we're still having to deal with some issues around funding the infrastructure work related to IDA. So that's kind of what's holding, I think what's holding the budget up at the moment. So
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions from our members of the public?
Yeah, Suzanne Gittimer.
Okay.
Can you give us your name and your address, please?
Hi, this is Suzanne Jatomer at 73 Clinton Street. I do think that the tree issue is it's a sticky wicket. So we had to have a tree taken down by the city took a tree down and kindly replaced it later on, but further inset on our property. But because it heaves our sidewalk, and then we're responsible for our sidewalks, and I don't want anyone hurting themselves walking on our sidewalk because the tree that the city put is heaving. The other thing is, if we're responsible for the trees, that's all and good, but when we want to prune them, and there's some people on my street that would like to just take these trees down because they're heaving their sidewalk, the Shade Tree Commission, I think, has to be involved. It's not entirely clear. So those parameters and restrictions, I think, need to be really clear to residents. Building, house by house. So we know what we're responsible for and what we're not responsible for.
Okay. Anything else there before I respond?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Suzanne. So yes, there is an ordinance, and yes, owners are responsible for the trees and the sidewalk in front of their properties. No, they are not permitted to remove trees. And yes, they are required to, currently under the ordinance, which is available on the city website, they are required to work with the Shade Tree Commission in terms of pruning disease or shaping the tree, whatever they wish to do.
They are required to replace.
Yes. Are they required to replace?
Yes.
Okay. So as well, I'm sorry, I misspoke. They are required to replace as well. And just lastly, I do know that there is a provision in the ordinance for members of the public to prune prune trees below 7 feet. So anything kind of below 7 feet, the homeowner does have the right to prune without having to interact with the Shade Tree Commission. So, I mean, this is all designed to make sure that our city's beautiful, that trees are looked after, that they're not being inappropriately pruned in a way that is detrimental to the health of the tree or, you know, the canopy of the city, basically. So, you know, I'll be working on this language, and I think part of the ordinance is, but part of this is about educating residents and business owners, property owners, and I'm happy to do that. I'll be working on the ordinance, and if anybody has any questions about it, certainly they can contact me.
So if I heard you correctly, both times earlier with the conversation with Judy, it was said that she did not have to replace the tree.
So I misspoke then.
Just so Judy knows, just so Judy
Okay,
knows.
so yeah, Judy, apparently I misspoke, and I'm glad to see that you did replace your tree because I love ginkgos, and it's a very pretty tree. So thank you for that. Right.
Okay, we have John. He did not give his last name. John, can you provide your full name and your address, please? Or not?
How's this?
John?
John Henchek. Old people have tough trouble with technology, guys. John Henchek, 99 Quarry Street, Lambertville.
All right, please proceed, John.
I wanted to make the council aware, if they're not, that the Fair Share Housing Center puts out a blog, and as late as February the 22nd, they had information put out which indicated that the Historic Preservation Commission was incorrect in its identification of the Clausen property as being on the state and national register and should have not been considered as part of the overlay. Also, notwithstanding that the individuals that owned it at the time were not noticed nor asked if they wanted to be in the overlay, and that again caused them some difficulty. I don't take what he says exactly as gospel. I'd like to refer the council to the statement on the fair share housing. It's his blog. But what bothers me is that it also indicates that Lambertville's lawyer, a gentleman by the name of Brian Schatz, wrote a letter to Judge Miller in which he indicated that the Historic Preservation Commission was wrong. It was not on any type of protection. The Holcomb Farm, as it's known, is a historic site. All 9 acres are on the state and national register of historic places. And I have to tell you, it's unbelievable that we were able to buy a historic property from the original property owners from 1705, and that it has such a pedigree. And so I think we need to keep a close look at this and make sure that, according to Mr. Gordon, that overlay required us for 10 fair share housing units. And if it was never should have been put on the overlay in the first place, first for the rights of the individual, and secondly, that it was on the state national register and therefore protected from adverse effect. There's other language that is sometimes used, but you have a protection against actions on the part of municipalities, state government, et cetera, and you then are entitled to what's known as a 106 or a review of the process. Also, I'd recommend the 106 for what the council wants to take a look at now with Clausen property. It will certainly put lights on across to everybody in raising interest on what we have here and what a resource it is. And many times, as a result of these reviews, folks from other parts and other areas come in, and you just never know when an angel might come to your help with anything that we want to do in the future. But the 106 review also helps eliminate any difficulty that might be occurred in the future, particularly with state or federal money. That's it. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, John. I will look into the 106 review, and I believe do we need to comment on this?
Just to clarify that there was an affordable housing overlay proposed and discussed, never enacted.
Thank you.
Under Boston Properties.
That's what I thought. Okay, and just before, while we're still talking about the whole department, I will note that I have my office hours up there, starting tomorrow, every Wednesday through the spring from 3 to 6. Come and visit. I hope to have furniture up there before 3 o'clock tomorrow, but I'll certainly have tea and scones. Are there other members of the public?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, may I have a motion to close the public portion of the public participation of the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. At this time, I don't think that there's anything else. Are there any other matters that the council wish to bring up? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for attending this evening, and thank you to Cindy and Mike.